with the nations of the world on our own soil.
Bem-vindos à Sociedade das Nações, um programa semanal sobre a atualidade internacional aqui na SIC Noticias, e hoje sem o Martim Cabral. Numa altura em que Bruxelas ainda digere o resultado eleitoral na Grécia, fala-se por toda a parte em crescimento e novas empresas. É este o tema do nosso programa de hoje. Para o enquadrar, diga-se que os Estados Unidos e a União Europeia estão envolvidos num longo e delicado processo de negociações que pode conduzir ao maior bloco comercial de toda a história da humanidade, com mais de 800 milhões de consumidores. Parte desta negociação passa, do lado americano, pelo gabinete do representante comercial da presidência, o chamado USTR. É aí que a nossa convidada, Christina Sevilla, dirige a pasta das pequenas e médias empresas. Veio a Portugal a encontrar novas possibilidades de investimento nacional no mercado americano e vice-versa. E começar por perguntar qual é o papel exato das PMEs na criação de riqueza e no volume de negócios na América de Barack Obama. Obama, que, recorde-se, pareceu ser o primeiro a apoiar a pretensão grega de indexar o pagamento da dívida ao crescimento real da economia do país.
Small and medium-sized enterprises are the backbone of the economy and the primary engines of economic growth and jobs and innovation, actually on both the US and EU sides, which is why the US and EU share the goal of promoting the growth of small business through the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. In the US, it's small and medium-sized enterprises have created 2/3 of all new jobs in the private sector in the last decades. And we know that small businesses that participate in international trade, they grow faster, they add jobs faster, and they pay higher wages than small businesses in the exact same sector, which serve purely domestic markets. And also the role of small businesses in trade is much larger than people think. It counts about 30% of the value of trade, but actually numerically 98% of our exporters are small businesses.
What about the survival capacity, survival rate of small and middle enterprises? Because in Portugal you have the experience that lots of them can survive for 1 year to 5 years. The lucky ones would go for 10 years. How is the situation in the States?
Well, in the United States, we think that an important strategy for helping small businesses survive and thrive is to actually diversify their customer base in order to better survive a downturn. And one of the important ways of doing that is through international trade. When there's a downturn in the United States or a downturn in Portugal, for example, or Europe, if you have a diversified customer base, you can sustain yourself throughout the downturn because you have more sales and revenues coming from abroad.
When you were touring the Midwest, trying to explain to small and middle businessmen the benefits of a trade agreement between the United States and Europe, did it ring a bell? Were they really convinced that there are benefits on such a trade agreement or not? Or you saw certain skepticism?
Well, we meet with a lot of local chambers of commerce from around the country whose membership of the vast majority are small and medium-sized businesses. Actually, a very small fraction of the total number of small businesses actually export. Usually it's, maybe one product or service to one foreign market, usually our partners Canada and Mexico.
Right.
But many small businesses are increasingly exporting around the world and looking to find new customers, partners, and suppliers. So I have been to the Midwest and the South talking about the US-EU agreement, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. And I think companies and small and medium businesses are very excited about these opportunities because we're talking about, we have 28 million small businesses in the US, 20 million on the EU side.
Right.
As I said, they're creating the vast majority of new jobs. I think 80% of new jobs in the EU are created by small business.
Yeah, that's true.
And if you look at small businesses that are already contributing to exports, that supports about 4 million jobs in the United States. And even more in the EU, 6 million jobs are supported by small and medium-sized businesses which export, either direct exporters or indirect exporters by being participants in the supply chain to larger firms. So if you're looking at the 4 million jobs in the U.S. already supported by small business exports and the 6 million jobs in the EU, there's huge untapped potential to grow this number, and that's why we see that the TTIP offers these
one thing that
opportunities.
sometimes we don't talk about is what about the prospects of joint ventures between small firms in the States, mid-sized firms in the States, and for instance in Portugal or in other countries of Europe. So not acting as competitors, but acting as collaborators.
Very much so. This is one of our goals in the TTIP. We want to connect customers, suppliers, partners, distributors among small business from Lisbon to Los Angeles, from Porto to Philadelphia. There are large Portuguese populations in the United States, Massachusetts, New York, elsewhere. And I've already spoken here with some Portuguese small businesses that are looking for distributors in the United States, for example. So I met here with a shoe company called No Animal Exploitation. They're a 100% vegan shoe company that has just begun their exporting strategy in the United States, and they did that by finding a distributor in Miami by a Portuguese American who knows the market. So supporting some U.S. jobs. They're selling in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, because there's a big market for this.
No doubt that Portugal is moving in small and mid-sized enterprises. For instance, we have a chain that makes products of people that are in jail, usually women, that produce things and they sell. So there are lots of new ideas. And I guess that you yourself, you have products from our enterprises, right?
I have been incredibly impressed.
Don't say the names. We don't want for you to promote the names, but just say it's...
I will. Well, I came here over the weekend to enjoy Lisbon and to experience some of your design shops on the Príncipe Real.
Yeah.
And this one is a Portuguese designer who is a biologist turned jewelry designer. And there are just wonderful elements of design here, but there's a tariff. There would be a tariff on importing this into the United States. I looked it up of about 11%.
Yeah.
I also went...
that would disappear with the trade pact.
With the U.S.-EU free trade agreement, we want to completely eliminate the tariffs between the U.S. and EU. And this would particularly benefit the Portuguese small business sector because there are a lot of...
The boots are also Portuguese?
The boots. These boots are Portuguese. I also bought them here in
Do they feel better
Lisbon.
than...
They're hand-stitched.
Are they comfortable?
They're extremely comfortable for walking.
Better than Italians?
I'm very impressed with the quality and design and the price point of the Portuguese shoes. But now, for example, with the shoe producers that I've met with here in Portugal, small shoe producers, 10 employees or less, the average tariffs faced in the United States on the footwear can range from 20 to 40% now. This would be eliminated with the TTIP, creating a huge competitive advantage for the Portuguese small businesses.
One of the things we've been feeling is that lots of our enterprises, SMEs are really micro enterprises, like one person or family enterprises. So the good thing is that the whole family is engaged, but the bad thing is that if it runs bad, it's not only one person that loses a job, but the whole family that goes into bankruptcy. Do you have the same problem in the States? About family-owned business?
Well, a lot of our small businesses, which are engaged in international trade, actually 2/3 have fewer than 20 employees. So they're actually quite small and similar. But what really holds potential for these 1- and 2-person family-owned shops are the possibilities of e-commerce, which have only recently, in recent years, 10 years ago, you had to look in the phone book and serve a local market. Now, from a location in Lisbon or Porto or in the United States in Brooklyn, you can access a transatlantic market of hundreds of millions of people. And we found that small businesses that are taking advantage of e-commerce platforms, of handicrafts, there's one in the United States that's very popular that has a lot of foreign sellers on it as well, called Etsy. For handicrafts like textiles, custom-made clothing and design, jewelry. The sellers on these platforms are 80% women-owned businesses making handicrafts with 1 or 2 employees. And instead of the average of maybe selling only to 1 or 2 markets, typically these online e-commerce platform SMEs are selling to 20 or more foreign destinations. And so I was meeting today with some of the Portuguese small businesses, and it's called the Embaixada.
It's a building that they recovered in Príncipe Real. I mean,
it's a gorgeous.
It was an ex-embassy.
Yeah, gorgeous 19th century embassy, which is now, I suppose, an embassy for Portuguese crafts.
What you see, like by walking around and by what you heard about our stories of success and less success, what you think could be the strong points of Portuguese small and mid-sized enterprises in a market like the United States? What would you say?
There is
it's not our smile.
A tremendous market for Portuguese quality and innovative design.
Quality, yeah.
I have seen some of the designers. We met with a concept store this morning in Chiado, is featuring ceramics and textiles, but with a contemporary modern twist.
Right.
From the northern region of Portugal. They started their business with this store just May of 2014. Now, 95% of their sales are tourists, foreign tourists, which is an export.
Sure.
But it shows that the demand in the market is there. I've also met with Portuguese cosmetics producers who might be some of the leading market brands in Portugal of cosmetics producers. A woman-owned business with 25 employees has sold very, very well in Portugal. Is not able as much to sell in other parts of the EU because each country has its own national brand. Sure. But the U.S., we look for brands from everywhere, and we like this Portuguese brand. They used some of the the red wine grapes as the inputs, as well as oatmeal and natural inputs into the product, and there could be huge potential. She's already begun online sales to the United States and seeing some, but through agreement like the TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, we want to make it easier for these small businesses.
The agreement,
to
of
sell
course,
overseas.
is a big thing. It has been announced with great fanfare from Washington to Brussels. Everyone says it's great, it's going to be great, but it can take some time to be achieved. I mean, in the meantime, these businesses need to survive and need to thrive. Do you have any clever idea about what to do in the meantime, in this interim period before we achieve an agreement?
Well, what we're trying to do now through the United States and the EU together, we're reaching out to small businesses around the country. In the U.S., we've held a series of 28 roundtables in different cities. As you know, I've gone to the Midwest, I've gone to TTIP town halls in Alabama, Birmingham, Mobile. I'll be going to Philadelphia, New York. We want to let people know about this opportunity coming down the road. And the same is true on the EU side, which is why I've been invited here by our U.S. Embassy in Lisbon before this round in Brussels to meet with the EU SMEs, with the Portuguese SMEs as well, because in the sectors in which the SMEs in Portugal are highly concentrated, like footwear, textiles, woolen products, there are clothing and apparel, high tariffs on these areas, which would be eliminated under the TTIP. So that would immediately make the Portuguese products.
But so what you're saying is that the tariffs will disappear when we have the trade agreement. So, but before we have the trade agreement, there is not much to attract.
Actually, well, I think it's possible that what we're also doing now is also trying to build the networks and connections between on the U.S. side, the small business service providers in our Department of Commerce and our Small Business Administration, and connect them to the small business service providers on the EU side, the European Enterprise Network, local chambers of commerce, as well as
so in a sense,
the member states.
You are preparing the ground.
We're preparing the groundwork. Right now, we know that there are, for example, from Portugal, we're already importing 95 million a year in footwear from which is highly concentrated in the SME sector, and similarly in textiles and other areas. So these are growth areas. So Portuguese companies are already making entry into the U.S. market, and we can expect that with the reduction in costs and reduction in burdensome paperwork, for example, that that companies should be preparing now, like through e-commerce platforms, through perhaps going to trade shows and finding potential distributors, and perhaps finding partners for joint ventures.
You are integrated into a larger body, the Office of the Trade Representative. I mean, and we feel that President Obama cares about SMEs, and that's it's also an imprint of his presidency. Inside of your department, you also feel that you are supported by the presidents.
Very much so. I think you might have noticed in the...
So it's not a president that cares about big business only.
The president very much cares for small business. I think you might have even noticed in his State of the Union address, he mentioned the importance of small businesses participating in international trade and our trade agreement with Europe. When President Hollande also came to visit us in Washington, both President Obama and President Hollande issued a statement together about the importance of the TTIP agreement for creating jobs and opportunity in the small business sector. So there's been a huge focus in the Obama administration on supporting the needs of small business and creating these market opportunities by creating a new consumer market of 800 million people between the U.S. and EU.
Let me just finish on this note. President Obama said recently that it's a good idea to bet on growth more than on any other element. I mean, and growth, he was referring to the Greek case. Growth means lots of things, like you have to have the technological basis, you have to have a skilled labor force, education, lots of things. What would you say are the key elements of success for small and mid-sized enterprises? What would you see from a philosophical point of view? What do you think are really the basis for success?
Well, entrepreneurial spirit and culture is one thing. Education, exactly. Willingness to... some of the Portuguese entrepreneurs, small businesses that I've met here are passionate, are entrepreneurial, are educated, want to share with the world the high quality of Portugal's products, which is a long history as a trading nation. And you actually do very well with the trade with the United States, even though we're only 5% of your market. You have a large... Portugal has a trade surplus with the United States. You sell more to us than we sell to you, and that's even without the removal of trade barriers. So if you're looking about opportunities for Portugal and maybe diversifying your customer base to be able to survive downturns, looking across the Atlantic to 300 million consumers with strong purchasing
This
power.
is really the last one is more personal thing. When you're growing in the United States, you have your Filipino heritage. You know what is a melting pot. When you were growing up before going to the State Department, what was your idea of Portugal? I mean, was it an exotic place that once conquered the world? Did you have any special idea about Portugal, what Portugal was or not? I
mean, I had a historical sense of, I've only recently visited for the first time 2 years ago when with some friends, we rented a villa in the Algarve. And not a lot of Americans have, not as many as should be traveling to Portugal. I saw, stunningly beautiful beaches.
What's happening? Why Portugal is not so well known in the United States?
We have a big country, and not as many people have traveled abroad sometimes as in Europe. You have so much proximity to each other. But Portugal has amazing, high quality design, food. Your products sell very well in the United States in the areas where SMEs are concentrated very highly. So I think that the opportunity for increased tourism services, sales from the small business sectors, there's a huge opportunity for Portugal to really, as a small country, there's so much diversity here in terms of, I've just traveled a little bit in the south and Lisbon and Sintra, and I would enjoy the opportunity to travel in the north as well. But your companies are already global in the textile sector. I met with a woman last night with 65 employees in the textile sector in the north that sells to Pottery Barn and Crate and Barrel because consumers demand the high quality products. And Portugal really has some impressive strengths from the small business sector people I've met
Christina,
with.
We arrived at the end of our time, but I know that you'll bring a good image of Portugal to the United States, and thanks a lot.
Very much so. Thank you so much.
Thanks.